Due to the way Deltarune releases episodically and with very long time spans in between each chapter, players are often left to dwell on cliffhangers and intriguing plot elements for a long time. The massive 4-year gap between the releases of chapters 2 and 3 was a big one, and fans really wanted something to discuss in the build up to the next installment. There were a lot of mysteries warranting plenty of discussion and theory crafting. Is Chris the knight? What's the purpose of the collectible egg items? Why did the dreamers divorce? And what caused Asgore to resign from his police job in disgrace? But no mystery had caught the attention and obsession of the entire community quite like Mike, a character who had been offhandedly mentioned in a total of 2 easily missable lines of dialogue from the fastest talking and most verbose character in chapter 2. And yet, people clung on to this name. Who the hell is Mike? And what importance did he have in the future chapters' stories? Well, now that we have some new insights since the release of chapters 3 and 4, I'd like to take you on a journey through the community's obsession with this elusive character. Oh, also, spoiler warning for basically every single Deltarune chapter that's been released as of now. And also, be sure to like and subscribe, it really helps out, and comment below if you want to as well. The first time Mike is ever mentioned is in chapter 2, when speaking to Spamton at his shop. When asked about his friends, Spamton responds with this.
We don't need anyone else. We don't need
easels or CRTs.
We don't need
man, woman or child at half price.
We don't need Mike. Chris, don't believe
anything you see on TV.
The man is a criminal, I tell you. A criminal.
From this dialogue alone, you'd think that Mike was some sort of friend turned sworn enemy of Spamton's. He also alludes to the idea that Mike is associated with television in some way. The next time Mike is brought up is during the Spamton Neo boss fight if he's defeated through fighting. He says,
"Are you getting all of this, Mike?"
implying that Mike plays an important role in recording footage for someone. So who exactly is Mike at this point in the story? Well, probably no one important. Spamton is an unhinged lunatic who constantly spouts non-sequiturs which aren't meant to be taken seriously in any way. Like, Congadero is not a real word. Plus, Spamton's entire gimmick is based very obviously on a 1997 commercial for a beverage called Big Shot Soda. And would you look at that? It features an NFL Hall of Famer named Mike Ditka. So the easiest way to explain it away is by saying that Mike is just another silly homage to the old commercial. However, we all know that Toby is good at hiding subtle hints towards his future projects, so the community latched on super hard. Mike is a person's name after all. That means he must be important in some way, right? The way Spamton says his name makes it seem like he might be a major player in a future chapter, maybe chapter 3. The cliffhanger at the end of chapter 2 implies that the next chapter would be set in a TV dark world, and since Spamton mentions Mike in the same breath as warning Chris not to believe anything they see on TV, everyone immediately assumed that Mike would play a big role in chapter 3, possibly as a final or super boss in that chapter, with many believing that Mike would be the name of the grinning TV seen at the end of chapter 2. Another theory was tied to this face that would appear in the left side of your screen while exploring the bottom floor of Queen's basement. It was a creepy little smiling face with yellow left and pink right eyes, the inverted colours of Spamton's eyes. Theorists dug into the game files and found that the sprite was called image_friend, which, since Spamton had considered Mike to be a friend, made people believe that this face was Mike. This was supported by the notion that Mike was present and watching Spamton Neo's fight, since Spamton asked Mike if he recorded everything. So for a while, the community was content with either believing Mike was an irrelevant name drop, or the next main antagonist or super boss. Well, that was until everything was flipped on its head with...
Hey Eddie! It's me, Spamton, Spamton, Spamton!
The Spamton Sweepstakes was an insanely hilarious event which contained a pseudo but not quite ARG with some interesting teasers and hints towards Season 3. For the purposes of this video, let's take a look at a particular secret. If we go to the listing for the Spamton Ring Wedding Ring, we can find a hyperlink which takes us to a page with the URL Damn You Tenor. In this page, a person, presumably Spamton based on the way the text looks, goes on a rant about how all of his misfortunes are the fault of a person named Tenor. Based on the picture at the top of the page being an X-Start TV and Tenor being a shortened version of Ann Tenor, fans were quick to pick up on the fact that Tenor was the name of Chris's TV, and presumably the source of the grinning face at the end of chapter 2. So if Tenor is the TV, then who the hell is Mike? Well, if we highlight the page, we can find some hidden text at the very bottom. In Spamton's rant, he wishes horrible things on Tenor and his whole team, except Mike. So at this point, it's clear that Mike is part of Tenna's crew, but Spamton doesn't possess any ill will towards Mike himself, just his associates like this Tenna person. This led people to assume that Tenna would be the main antagonist of Chapter 3, and Mike would possibly serve as that chapter's superboss. Another prevailing theory that emerged around this time was that Mike would appear in the form of a cat or a cat-like creature. This sounds absurd, but from my research, people actually were super into this idea and tried their damnedest to make it make sense. Which, well, props to them, I guess. There's a lot of information the community has dredged up to make this a plausible theory, so I'll try to recount the highlights. Firstly, all Darknet enemies have one or more element types with little to no gameplay purposes. For example, Ruden's element is Jewel and Werewire's element is Electric. Spamton, strangely, has the dual element typings of Puppet and Cat. The former makes sense, I mean look at Neo, but the latter is a little strange. Why Cat? This led to people believing that Spamton was associated with cats in some way that we aren't aware of yet. Perhaps his sales success came from a cat? The next point was that Spamton started off with terrible sales, mainly attributed to his bad luck, but everything miraculously turned around once he began to receive advice over the phone from an unknown voice. Cat figurines, such as Japanese Maneki Nekos, are seen as superstitious good luck charms for their owners, so this further supported the theory that the person on the phone with Spamton, assumed to be Mike according to this theory, was a cat granting Spamton magical fortunes. Adding on to the whole luck-based thing, a lot of the secret Spamton Sweepstakes pages had extra secret images, which appeared at very low probability rates. For example, in a page featuring a chair, clicking on it would normally cause the chair to just distort with an ominous sound effect. However, there is a 5% chance that clicking on the chair instead causes a pair of yellow and pink eyes to appear and boot you back to the main page. This pair of yellow and pink eyes obviously alluding back to the image_friend. Furthermore, there are a lot of cat-based images throughout the Sweepstakes page, presumably based around a fictional in-universe video game called Cat Petters. You can also find a series of blog posts made by Noelle about her playthrough of Cat Petters and her attempts to obtain a super rare cat. And since light world objects manifest into sentient creatures in the Dark World, people jumped to the conclusion that Mike was the Dark World version of this super rare cat. The final important piece of evidence, of course, is that image_friend's face just looks a lot like a Cheshire grin, alluding heavily to the Cheshire Cat from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Another theory also popped up in this time period, and this one might be the one that broke the community's brain, I'll be honest. During the 4-year interim between chapters 2 and 3, people started going a little nutty. In spring of 2023, Toby published the second issue of his Deltarune newsletter, where he stated that the Cowboy segment planned for Chapter 3, which was teased in the Spamton Sweepstakes secret pages, was in danger of being cancelled. Seriously, one of the only segments that we teased may end up cancelled? Well, that's how cowboy shows go, I guess. Fans were a little disappointed by this news, but became suspicious by the wording. Usually, when a segment of a game is taken out like this, the devs would say it was removed or cut from development. Why would Toby say the segment was cancelled specifically? Of course, it made sense that a segment of a TV show would be cancelled, but wording a development update like this was intriguing to say the least. Parallel to this, fans resurfaced a relatively old meme video Toby Fox made in 2019 called Friend Inside Me, which was just a sentence mixed version of You've Got a Friend in Me from Toy Story. Wait, that title sounds a little interesting. Friend Inside Me. Surely Deltarune doesn't involve an element of the player controlling someone from the inside, right? Fans spontaneously decided that these two revelations were inextricably linked somehow. Woody from Toy Story is a cowboy whose in-universe TV show was cancelled right before its final episode was aired, and Toby Fox said that Deltarune's cowboy segment was cancelled. This led to a theory that the superboss of chapter 3 or 4 would be a cowboy, and would probably be Mike or someone related to him. It was pretty insane. When chapter 3 rolled around, we finally got a little confirmation on who Mike was. and by that I mean we basically got nothing at all. We never actually see Mike in Chapter 3, but Tenna constantly speaks to him. From this, we can somewhat ascertain his role in Tenna's team. From his name alone, a lot of people, including me, guessed that he would be Tenna's sound guy, which is partially true, but it seems like he's some sort of omnipresent being who manages basically every aspect of Tenna's show, including lighting, visual effects, recording, and even scheduling Tenna's events. It seems that Mike is very important to Tenna, as the latter is the most distraught when he finds out that the former wants to quit at the end of the chapter. Even during Tenna's boss fight, he still calls out to Mike with instructions even though he knows that Mike probably isn't helping anymore. In Chapter 4, surprisingly, we actually get some insights into Mike's identity. We get to visit Castletown once again, where we find a locked Mike-themed minigame room requiring a passcode to enter. The code is 6453, corresponding to how the letters spelling M-I-K-E would be positioned on a numbered keypad. After solving a puzzle or two and adjusting our microphones, or I guess the sensitivity of your Joy-Con if we're playing on the Switch 2, we can enter Mike's personal room, initiating one of my favourite fights in any game ever. A voice calls out asking why we entered a private room, badgering us on whether or not we are Mike, before declaring himself as Mike and initiating a battle. The fight starts off against a very loud, microphone-headed man who loudly claims to be Tenna's elusive friend, Motormouth Mike, and he's not very happy that you've entered his private room. I really like the flavour of Motormouth Mike's attacks being based around modulating your volume level to avoid clapping microphone people and mewing audience members, I guess. Eventually, Motormouth Mike gets tired of attacking you and leaves, before being replaced by a silent dancing cat creature with microphones for hands and feet, who the off-screen Motormouth Mike claims to be himself in a different outfit. This is where the fight goes off the rails and starts to incorporate feline gimmicks like patting cats to stop them from spitting hairballs at you. After a while, Cat Mike is forced to leave by Motormouth Mike, and is now replaced by a tall and lanky microphone man with a cowboy hat who can't even remember his own name. Frustrated by Cowboy Mike's lack of effort to even act convincingly, Motormouth Mike appears alongside Cat Mike, proclaiming that all three of them are actually Mike and they work together for Tenna. After a couple more deranged, feline-themed attacks, Cat and Cowboy Mike reveal that they're actually a shadow guy and a zapper wearing bad costumes. And after some finagling, it's also revealed that Motormouth Mike is just a green Pippin in a disguise. None of them are actually the real Mike, but they all just pretend to be him to keep Tenna happy. It also turns out that none of them actually know who Mike really is because no one has ever seen him. When Tenna asks for Mike to do something, Tenna either just does it himself, the three impersonators do it, or the thing just magically happens. Cowboy Mike suggests that the real Mike has been the three of them all along, but that doesn't explain who invented the idea of Mike from the very beginning then. Afterwards, you're welcome to come back to the room and play a variety of minigames, including the Tat, Jongler, and oh my god, is that Pluie? Motormouth Mike explains that the purpose of these minigames is to decide who Mike actually is, with the Mike whose minigame receives the highest score being considered the real Mike. Of course, if you hadn't been able to tell, this whole Easter egg is just a fun reference to all of the fan theories surrounding the identity of Mike. Motormouth Mike is the standard interpretation of what his character would look like by the general player base. Since he lives in a dark world based around television, it was an easy assumption to make that he would be microphone themed. His general design also aligned with the theory that he was going to be Chapter 3's superboss, since the two characters who had fulfilled that role in previous chapters, Jevil and Spamton, are short little goblins as well. It also followed the theory that he would be the host of a show, seeing as he wears a tuxedo. Cat Mike is a pretty clear riff on the Mike is a cat theory, making Mike a silent anthropomorphic cat whose attacks are basically all cats. But to be more specific, the cats used in these attacks are sprites hidden in the Spamton Sweepstakes page for the fictional game Cat Petters, which, as you remember, was what people were using as evidence to prove this theory right. It's also great that Cat Mike's eyes are coloured in the exact same way as image_friend, to really hammer in that Mike is definitely a cat. If you speak to Motormouth Mike while Cat Mike's minigame Pluie has the highest score, he'll get offended that you're trying to convince people that Mike is a cat, and then makes fun of you for assuming the colours pink and yellow mean a friend. Finally, Cowboy Mike is a reference to the friend inside me theory of there being a secret cowboy boss in Chapter 3. Also, if you speak to Motormouth Mike while Cowboy Mike has the highest minigame score, he'll say, "I'll make you pay, I've got connections, I've got friends on the inside." Even though it turns out his friend on the inside is just Cowboy Mike anyway. Friend inside me, indeed. A lot of people say that this whole thing is Toby making fun of his player base for coming up with obsessive and incorrect fan theories. I'm guessing these people genuinely thought Mike was originally intended to be a super important, pivotal character to the story, but then the evil Toby Fox saw all of the stupid theories and made Mike a dumb joke character out of spite at his community. But I don't see it like that at all. I'm still of the belief that Mike was never meant to be a super important character in the long run, and after playing chapters 3 and 4, I can confidently say that his relationship with Spamton is almost never touched upon again. Furthermore, Toby is very open about his support for his fans and their work. It would have been super easy for him just to make a whole joke about how Mike doesn't actually exist and the fanbase is stupid for thinking he's such a big deal to the story, but instead he chose to put all of his time and effort into an incredibly funny and mechanically unique boss fight, incorporating all of the silly community theories, which culminates in the revelation that even the characters within the game canonically don't even know who Mike is, which just feels more like Tricky Tony being in on the whole who is Mike obsession, rather than him mocking the fanbase for it. If you're the type to get offended by the green Matt Pat Pippin doing a whole Pepe Sylvia rant at the end, then that might be a you problem personally. Now, in spite of everything I just said, I think we should stop asking who is Mike and instead question whether or not Mike even exists at all. The implication from the fight and dialogue surrounding it is that Mike just isn't real. Based on what we know from chapter 3, Mike manages almost all elements of Tenna's show from off-screen, but for all we know it could have just been these 3 goobers doing it all along. Plus, Motormouth Mike also says that Tenna ends up manually performing a lot of the tasks that he asked Mike to do, which means that Mike could literally just be something like Tenna's imaginary friend or alter ego of some kind. We can see that Tenna has a lot of control over his show with or without Mike, so who's to say he doesn't just handle the whole thing himself? However, there's also a lot of evidence to suggest that Mike is real, the most obvious piece being Spamton's mention of him in chapter 2, though this could be disproven as Spamton is known to steal a lot of Tenna's gimmicks, so this could just be Spamton mimicking how Tenna always commands Mike. Another interesting piece of evidence proving the existence of Mike is the music. There is some evidence to suggest that characters within the game can hear each other's signature themes, like how Rousey can recognize Rule's Card's track if you play it on the piano in chapter 4. The battle theme that plays when fighting against the Mike impersonators, Cat Swing, is essentially a jazz mashup of Hey Every and Now's Your Chance to Be Ya. Now we know that Spamton copied a lot of TV World stuff and incorporated it into his own deranged salesman persona, and we know that Spamton was supposedly really close to Mike, so it's not out of the question that Spamton's tracks are based off of Mike's. But that means that Mike has to exist for Cat Swing to canonically be his track, right? The 3 impersonators don't know who Spamton is, but they use Cat Swing. Does that mean that there is a real Mike somewhere? I don't really know. Please comment below and tell me if I'm on the right track or if I'm just being stupid. Anyway, the final piece of evidence is found immediately after the battle against the Mikes. Once the Green Pippin has gotten the conspiratorial ramblings out of his system, he and his fellow impersonators leave the room along with Rousey and Susie if they participated in the fight, leaving Chris alone to explore a newly opened passageway to the right of the room. At the very end of this very long passageway is a dead end, gazing out into a black void, and waiting there for a couple of seconds will reveal something horrifying. A giant JPEG of a microphone. It's not entirely stated what this entity is, but it's pretty widely accepted that this might be the real Mike. And I do just love the whole idea of Deltarune fans hyping up Mike with all of these super creative character designs, and he might literally just be a stock image. It's very funny, yet it still makes a ton of sense in the context of the game's narrative thus far. Honestly, no one knows who Mike is, not even the in-game characters, and now I'm turning into the green conspiracy theorist Pippin trying to make sense of it all. So I think I should wrap it up here before my head explodes. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.